Before this video starts, I want to go over two things. First off, as you can tell, new character design. I'm going to use this starting from this video. Also, there's something I want to discuss, but I didn't really have time to put it in at some point for the video, so I'm just going to put this here. You can pause it, read it. I understand if you don't agree with my point of view on this, but please read this before the video begins. Alright, you good? Anyway, let's talk about everyone's least favorite state, and I speak for everyone. Florida. Ugh. I was just... Alright, get out. All of you, just get out. Get out now. Except you, alligator. You can stay. Grab yourself a drink. Down the hall, to the left. Make yourself at home. Anyways, as I'm sure you all know, Florida is a political battleground. It has been and will continue to be hotly contested, with millions poured in by each candidate. And it's not like this is a new thing either.
Stand by. CNN right now is moving our earlier declaration of Florida back to the too close to call column.
Florida is of course in the news because, as many of you know, Governor Ron DeSantis, seen here watching 17 kids die horrifically in a car crash, has recently signed House Bill number 1557, also unofficially known as the Don't Say Gay Bill, into law. Easily the most controversial state bill since North Carolina's restroom bill that helped Roy Cooper win election as governor. This bill has its supporters and detractors, and it is very clear to see how polarizing it is, even evident by how Governor DeSantis goes on the defense when the bill is called by its less official name.
Parental rights and education, what critics call the Don't Say Gay Bill, is on the Senate floor.
Does it say that in the bill?
Know that you support.
Does it say that in the bill? I'm asking you to tell me what's in the bill, because you are pushing false narratives. It doesn't matter what critics say.
This is easily one of the most comprehensive bills in the so-called culture wars, and it's very much misunderstood by both sides. Plenty of those against the bill seem to misunderstand why exactly it's bad, while those supporting it seem, from my point of view, very much oblivious to its flaws. This video's goal is to properly address the issues with this bill, correct the misconceptions around it, and hopefully allow those supportive of it to understand the perspective of those against it, and for those who see issues with it to truly understand why they are a problem. Anyone who has browsed Twitter in the last few weeks has probably been witness to this sort of argument. Actually, it's just an anti-grooming bill. The radical left wants to groom your kids. Which is a pretty bold and powerful argument, you know? I mean, I think I speak for most people when I say we don't like grooming, so calling the bill an anti-grooming bill sets up a pretty strong defense. And as mentioned by the chapter title, there's been this redefinition of grooming I've seen some people try. Grooming, the deliberate act of bringing a child into sexual, political, or racial ideology, practice, cult, or lifestyle without the knowledge or consent of his or her parents, for the aim of isolating them from their family so the external party can manipulate or abuse them. What the fuck? That's not even remotely the definition of grooming. First off, take special notice of how they said, without the knowledge or consent of his or her parents, like they snuck that in there. Even though grooming can happen from anyone. Yes, even parents. Also, why are people trying to change the definition of grooming for political gains? Grooming has nothing to do with political or racial ideologies. The actual definition is the action by a pedophile preparing a child for a meeting, especially through the internet, with the specific intent of committing a sexual offense. Yeah, that has nothing to do with any of this. And here's the other issue with this argument. Even if this wacko definition of grooming that is wrong is somehow accurate, this bill doesn't even mention the word grooming or anything close to that matter within its text. The closest thing I could find is Article 3, I guess, which I will read. Classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on sexual orientation or gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. Which, okay, that section of the bill has its own problems, which I'll get into in a little bit. But let me be clear in saying that any serious criticism of this bill has literally nothing to do with a ban on teaching K through 3 about sex. If this bill was just a ban on teaching sex to kids in those grades, no one would have a problem with it. It's clearly not the problem people have with this bill, and honestly, it's disingenuous to try to claim anyone opposing this bill supports grooming, in my honest opinion. It's not a productive kind of argument. Past that though, if interpreted the right way, I don't even think this bill can say you can't talk about sex itself, just sexual orientation, as in sexuality such as gay or hetero, etc., or gender identity. Sexual orientation is defined as a person's identity in relation to their gender to which they are sexually attracted to. And gender identity is a person's sense of one's own gender. Neither of these definitions are synonyms for sex itself. Wouldn't it have made more sense to just write it as classroom instruction by school personnel or third parties on topics of sex and sexual relations may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3 or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. That would actually, ban sex being discussed in kindergarten through grade 3, and it would make it very clear through the law. And Democratic lawmakers knew this and had the same idea. They were the ones pushing amendments to the bill to actually clarify this, but they all failed. Now that that misconception has been cleared up, let's get into the main issues with this bill. Let me read to you Article 1. In accordance with the rights of parents, adopt procedures for notifying a student's parent if there is a change in the student's services or monitoring related to the student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being and the school's ability to provide a safe and supportive learning environment for the student. The procedures must reinforce the fundamental right of parents to make decisions regarding the upbringing and control of their children by requiring school district personnel to encourage a student to discuss issues relating to his or her well-being with his or her parent or to facilitate discussion of the issue with the parent. And I mean, on paper, this sounds reasonable? I mean, parents should know how their kid is doing, right? But the biggest problem is, I earnestly believe that these procedure adoptions can and will be interpreted to include a kid's sexuality or gender identity. And I should mention that this section of the bill isn't specific to grades K through 3. This can be used in middle schools and high schools. And the latter is frankly where a lot of teens realize their sexuality. It's important that the individual who's LGBT is in control of when or if they come out to their parents. It's their right to decide when to tell their family for a variety of reasons. The Florida legislature putting that into the hands of teachers just isn't right in my opinion. Another issue with this bill is the double standard between hetero and non-hetero relationships. When the bill says sexual orientation, I highly doubt this restriction includes hetero relations. There's no way schools are going to avoid discussing them, given how about 90% of the population is straight. This bill arbitrarily sets a double standard that talking about two dads is somehow world-ending relative to a dad and a mom, when the former is just as valid as the latter. This idea that has circled around in a lot of conservative states that somehow LGBTQ relations should be treated differently to straight ones is, in my view, just simply unfair and not right. Putting aside the incoherent defense of this bill and the issues many have about its implementation, one of the biggest problems is that the bill is incredibly ambiguous. The Don't Say Gay bill fails to define many of the terms listed in it, including gender identity, sexual orientation, instruction, etc. Any sort of bill, especially one as controversial as this that is making headlines, should have many, if not most of its not 100% clear terms defined, especially if it wants to make it out of court. What do I mean by this? Let's take the example of instruction being defined, or lack thereof. Say, for the sake of this argument, you're a male teacher and you have a husband. Say the class is making a family tree, and you've made an example of your family tree, which includes your husband. Is that allowed under this law? What if one of the kids has gay parents? Are you allowed to even acknowledge it? And I'm not trying to just make up what-if scenarios to attack this bill. There's plenty of other reasons to do so. But seriously, teachers may not want to run the risk of potentially breaking this law, considering that, parents can sue the school if they're bothered enough by it. They're just gonna steer clear of any subject remotely related. Another misconception, an example of the vagueness with this bill, is that technically it does place a limit on discussion even outside of the K through 3 rule, as it also bans discussion, quote unquote, in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students in accordance with state standards. But what does that mean? I'm not even joking. What state standards? I was trying to look this up, and if anyone knows, please give me a link. Is it the Florida Department of Education? Is the legislator supposed to pass a law defining the state standards? The odds are the Florida courts are going to end up deciding this. And that's how a lot of this bill, that's how a lot of it's going to be. Interpreted by the courts or perhaps struck down due to its ambiguous definitions. Whether or not you support the ideas of this bill, it is not okay to write a law as vague as this one. I want to close out this video with a statistic. I know this video is more serious and a little bit shorter compared to my last one, and trust me, there will be more funny videos soon, but I felt this was a current event that needed to be discussed. I want to mention, studies have shown that LGBTQ students who are able to discuss these topics are better off mentally. According to the Trevor Project, and I'll put the link down below for anyone interested, LGBTQ youth who learn about LGBTQ issues or people in class at school have a 23% lower odds of reporting a suicide attempt in the past 12 months. School is a place where every student, no matter their race, religion, or sexual/gender identity, should feel safe and welcomed. I know it's impossible to guarantee a safe environment for literally every single kid, but we have to try. My fear with this law, and I think the fear a lot of other people have, is that its vague interpretation can and will be used to shut down discussion about this topic, even way past kindergarten through 3rd grade. No one is saying that kindergartners need to know literally everything about being LGBT. But it doesn't hurt to allow teachers to at least briefly acknowledge that maybe some of their students have 2 fathers or 2 mothers without risking their school getting sued. From my perspective, and this is just my opinion, it really seems like the vagueness of this bill was intentional. It is a weapon for conservatives with their ongoing culture war, specifically about LGBTQ topics. It's red meat for the conservative voter base DeSantis will need when he runs for president. And trust me, he wants to. It's not about actually solving anything or improving education. It's meant to flame the culture wars and get people rallied behind DeSantis on this. We can and should be better than this. If you've ever seen any of my bios online, you'll notice I say I hate culture wars. And this is why. Innocent people are stuck in the crossfires as politicians attack certain groups as proxies for their opponents. Politics needs to be about policy, not this. We can, we should, and hopefully we will be better than this.